Continuing in the book of Daniel, we have seen how Nebuchadnezzar sought to assimilate the brightest young men from Judah into Babylonian culture. These young men, including Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were chosen for their exceptional qualities and were subjected to a rigorous training program intended to erase their Hebrew identity and instill in them the values and beliefs of Babylon. Their names were changed to reflect Babylonian deities, and they were offered the king's delicacies and wine as part of their daily provision. Despite these efforts to conform them to the pagan culture, Daniel chapter 1 verses 8 through 10 reveals a pivotal moment of resistance and faithfulness. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, "I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king." Daniel purposed in his heart not to defile himself. This decision was not a casual or convenient one. It was a deliberate and resolute stand for righteousness. Daniel understood that the king's food and wine were likely offered to idols, and partaking in them would signify acceptance of and participation in idol worship. This act of defiance was rooted in his deep commitment to God's commandments and his identity as one of God's chosen people. The text highlights that God had brought Daniel into favor and goodwill with the chief of the eunuchs. This divine favor is a recurring theme throughout the book of Daniel, demonstrating that God honors those who honor him. Proverbs chapter 16 verse 7 states, "When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him." Daniel's faithfulness and resolve to maintain his purity resulted in God's intervention on his behalf, softening the heart of the chief of the eunuchs and granting him favor. The chief of the eunuchs expressed his fear of the king, indicating the severity of the situation. Nebuchadnezzar was a ruthless ruler, and any deviation from his commands could result in severe punishment or even death. The eunuch's concern for his own life underscores the gravity of Daniel's request and the potential danger involved. Yet Daniel's courage and faith in God's protection overruled any fear of man. His boldness is reminiscent of the apostles in Acts chapter 5 verse 29. But Peter and the other apostles answered and said, "We ought to obey God rather than men." Daniel's refusal to defile himself is a powerful reminder to us as believers that we are called to live in the world but not be of the world. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 exhorts us, "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." Just as Daniel stood firm in his convictions amidst a corrupt and idolatrous culture, we too must remain steadfast in our commitment to God's standards, even when it means standing alone or facing opposition. This passage also challenges us to examine our own lives. Are we willing to purpose in our hearts not to defile ourselves with the things of this world? Are we prepared to take a stand for righteousness regardless of the cost? Daniel's example encourages us to trust in God's sovereignty and faithfulness, knowing that he will honor those who honor him. As we reflect on Daniel chapter 1 verses 8 through 10, let us be inspired by Daniel's unwavering commitment to purity and faithfulness. His story is a testament to the power of a life wholly devoted to God, and it calls us to a higher standard of holiness and obedience. May we, like Daniel, purpose in our hearts to remain undefiled and wholly dedicated to our Lord, trusting in his favor and protection as we navigate the challenges of this world.